Recording is on.
Welcome to DXgov governance discussion for Wednesday, April 28th, 1500 UTC. Starting first with the proposal roundup. There are two proposals boosted or pending boosting on the mainnet. Both are actually resubmissions of the deposit 400 ETH into Swapper XI proposal. This is one that passed last Monday, but there was an issue with the transfer from the DAO to the multi-sig. So there was a new relayer contract, an ETH relayer contract that allows ETH transfers from the DAO to the multi-sig that was deployed by Gusto. And then we just resubmitted these two proposals. The first one is a proposal for 5 ETH to be sent just so we can test out the new ETH relayer. And then the rest one is for the 395 ETH. So then that will eventually find its way into XDAI, Swapper on XDAI. So we'll need to trade and convert those into the 5 different pairs and then bridge them over. And then it will need to go through the proposal process on XDAI. But I think this is important component of increasing liquidity on Swapper on XDAI. So hopefully we'll be moving forward with that. Yeah, and that's it for mainnet right now, just those two proposals. I have some thoughts on maybe a couple others we want to get to in a second, but just looking at the current ones on XDAI for right now, there's a proposal for, I want to say levitate every time I see this one, but levotiate. And then there is a somewhat exciting proposal for slash the full amount for the compromise account. So this was from Gemino's proposal, and we actually, I think Nylon was able to find a specific amount of rep down to like 18 decimals that the attacker had. So this proposal is just a simple subtraction of that rep there. And so, yeah, hopefully that will go through, and that will be a good precedent set for those trying for being able to slash rep on XDAI and also just have a run us through that process.
Yeah, on that one, to find Nylon was able to pull the exact amount of rep using a graph query, which not everyone maybe knows how to do. And because XDXDAO on XDAI is not a verified contract, I think, you can't interact with it on using Block Scout, which it would be good, obviously, if we could interact with it directly using Block Scout, so like we can on mainnet with Etherscan. So I don't know if we can get that. I don't know how you verify it, if there's a process or something. But like in that case, we're counting on the graph query, and I guess it seems to be accurate, but it's not actually like. I would feel safer doing it with Block Scout, like directly to the contract. Like that's how I would know how to do it. I don't know how to use the graph. So in like long run, we probably want to be able to interact with the DAO using Block Scout, right?
Yeah, so you should be able to also interact with like Remix or something. Like it's like an online IDE for Ethereum. So you should be able to interact with the contract and, run everything that you like, as you would with Block Scout or Etherscan. I can maybe make a tutorial. It's not very difficult to like query the graph. I can maybe make like a quick tutorial for that. But anyway, we should probably ask them to verify. I think like this option in Block Scout is fairly new. So
yeah, and I think. So Block Scout is doing the verification themselves. I know Etherscan does that. And I guess when you have a verified contract, that means you can connect your Web3 wallet and basically interact with that contract with the functions that are outlined there. And so Etherscan, I guess, controls the verification process for them. But for Block Scout, how does that work?
So on Etherscan, basically, when the blockchain sees bytecode, so you basically insert the code of the contract itself, and then it verifies that this is the actual bytecode, and then you can interact with the different functions because it's like fully open source. I'm not sure how you do it on Block Scout, but I would imagine it's the same thing. Like you would have to go to the contract, verify it, and then enter the contract of the code of the contract, and then you're able to interact with different functions.
But is that something that people can just do, or the Etherscan / Block Scout team do that, or like you just need an individual to do it?
In Etherscan, it's anyone who has the code of the contract. In I'm not sure about Block Scout, but I would imagine it's the same.
Okay.
Well,
because I mean they're copying features from Etherscan, right?
Yeah.
Or the opposite. Etherscan's copied features from Block Scout. Actually.
You have a Block Scout maxi here.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of turning into Block Scout reporter.
Yeah.
They
You
have,
can execute functions.
Cool. Well, I think it's specifically just like figuring out Block Scout because we rely on that. Everyone knows Etherscan. So yeah, maybe we can talk about this offline. Just to go through the rest of the proposals, there was a rep boost for Cabela, which is outstanding amount from the first rep boost. Cabela's been a really active community member, Omen, Keybase in the Discord. There was a member balancer payout for covering a USD shortfall. This is a request to get DAI back for an address that had sent USDC to DXgov because it needed about 3,900 USDC to complete a swapper liquidity order. So this is just a member balancer for that. There is the proposal to retain outside counsel for DXgov, which I think should pass in a couple of days. We discussed that last week on the governance call. There's Pulp Machina, mainnet rep sync. Good to see more rep being claimed on XDAI. Then there's a software development for DXgov. This is Quellcode's proposal to pay them, and it was just boosted recently. And then there is the DXgov Discord rep boost signal proposal. So this is an initiative that Keenan has been driving to give rep rewards for active Discord contributors. So he calculated up for different numbers, and I think this is something he plans to do. We plan to try to do quarterly as a way to give like another different types of rep distribution to different community members. So I think this is a good initiative. And there's the signal proposal. I think I just boosted that this morning there, so we can vote on that. And then lastly, there is a add BUSD to the swapper XDAI token list proposal. So any questions, thoughts, comments on the XDAI proposals? Cool. And then just because, I mean, XDAI is interesting because like typically when we do like proposals, everything lasts for 7 days on mainnet, but since XDAI, it's 5 days. Sometimes like proposals get submitted and voted before the week. And then also because we have majority votes, that also happens. So just like two proposals that passed recently. So the exec search for marketing lead actually just passed last night. I think Melanie will hit on that later. And then this is kind of important. So we had 3 majority votes over the last, I guess it was like Saturday, Sunday night, and then Monday. This was due to the farming. This was to create the farming test on Swapper XDAI. So there was 2 proposals to fund the Swapper farming relayer, and then 1 proposal to actually set the parameters of the campaigns. And since this was a majority rep boost, that means everyone who voted for it voted before it was boosted, and you need to go back and redeem the proposal to reclaim your rep, right? Because basically the way that the system works is every time you vote on an unboosted proposal, you stake, I think it's 0.04% of your rep on that proposal, and therefore you can't use that amount of rep to vote on other proposals until that proposal is passed and has gone through. So if you vote on those proposals, you have rep that is not yet, and you haven't claimed that you have rep that is not able to be able to use for other proposals right now.
Yes, yeah, that's pretty. You got it kind of both right. It's 0.04 or 4% of rep is locked up, I think, on most of these schemes, and it sort of makes sense that the person who would have made those proposals or like that nobody boosted it, because there was sort of this push to get an absolute majority, and it doesn't need to be boosted if it ends up getting an absolute majority. But because of this rep blocking thing, it almost makes sense to boost it maybe anyways, because then you wouldn't need reps to get it. The rep
But even it would still account only until it got boosted. So even if you boosted it, I think, right? If you boosted it,
it's only
tell
after
everyone
it's
to vote
boosted.
on. It's only after
Yeah.
24 hours.
Yeah,
I think we still should do it, because for this one we may have like the last 10 or 15% would, and like we do. I would assume anything we want a majority vote on, we typically do want it to like happen quickly. So if like we weren't able to get a majority vote, it may have been worth it to boost it anyway.
Yeah, and it was really impressive to see how quickly, I think especially the second one passed. Like I think it was like a matter of an hour or something. So it's really cool to see how quickly the community can like execute and move on something. There was a moment there where I like was a little scared that the second one was not going to make it because of all this rep that was locked up from the first one. I was like, oh my God, this will be done.
Doesn't that affect the denominator though, too?
It does, but like if it was like 50% of all the rep was voted, like and it was like the same set of voters more likely on the second one, like overall they're going to have a lesser percentage, right?
Slightly,
because like 2% less.
The numerator would be decreasing faster than the denominator.
Yeah,
right?
the denominator would like decrease by 2%, and the numerator would decrease by 4%, right? So like you're like losing some rep.
Also related to that, like in that case, you have to go claim your rep that was staked. Just so everyone knows, the notification that tells you if there's something for you to claim does not work on XDAI. So if you've ever done that specific action before, or you've staked on proposals, you need to go find the proposals that you did something on and go find the redeem button on that proposal and redeem whatever you're owed. The notification thing doesn't work, which is
Is there any plan to get that working on XDAI?
I just took a note to talk, because DAOstack is not really actively developing, but they do have some support, and I just took a note to like tell them about this bug, because it is pretty annoying.
Yeah.
One like kind of workaround that is like at least thorough, if annoying, would be to go to Block Scout with your address. Any like staking that you had done, if you click on that transaction where you did the staking, you can see a proposal ID in Block Scout, and feel free to DM me or whatever, or ping me about how to do this. I'm happy to help. You get the proposal ID, you can paste that into the Alchemy URL and like find that proposal that you had staked on, and then you should be able to redeem from there.
The other less sophisticated option is just to open every proposal on Alchemy, and you'll look for blue buttons.
That's what I do.
Which, if you're looking for a good refresher on what has been happening, then sure, that makes sense.
Which wouldn't be annoying if it didn't take like 15 seconds for each page to load for some reason.
Or
When they
more.
load.
Kid, just be thankful that it opens in a new tab these days. That saves like half the time.
I mean, to be honest, that's actually what happened with me. I was like going back and putting these proposals in, and then I just like clicked on a link, and then I was like, "Ooh, redeem!" Like, and then I was like, "Oh, that's right!" Like you kind of see it, and so now I'm just looking at proposals in the past.
It's like finding the 20 in that winter jacket. Like,
it's like.
So, Chris, I don't see it on the agenda, but in recently passed proposals, so I don't think we talked about it last week, but the Treasury diversification V2, the XDAI proposal passed, a couple days before, but then the mainnet proposal also passed. So that is go ahead.
Yeah. But I didn't actually put anything specific on the agenda with that, but yeah. So now it's go ahead. Like so anyone now could fulfill or submit a proposal that falls under those conditions. There's actually two different proposals that I think we need to do this week that are related to kind of bigger ones. So one, we need to do some type of transfer to XDAI, just because we're about like 150,000 XDAI now, and we have some WEF there, but it's a little bit less. So I imagine we probably want to do just like 100 ETH proposal that transfers XDAI there. So that's one. And then the second one is what Sky mentioned. I think it would be good for someone to start the first proposal that falls under the Treasury Authorization Proposal V2. And so that would, you just need to follow the conditions laid out in that proposal. Any thought, just quickly on the XDAI, because I was thinking I wanted to submit that today so we could get those funds in. Do we need more WETH, or do we just kind of want XDAI? I mean, I think we've been primarily using it for funding things, right? And that's what most of the XDAI is coming out. Some people are claiming, or some people are requesting WETH, but just for, we have 150,000 XDAI and then 98.5 WETH. And I think the WETH, there's only been about 5 withdrawals. So I think it probably makes sense just to do 100 ETH transfer that's converted to XDAI, but I wanted to see if anyone else had any other thoughts on the funding.
Bid to include some USDC for the purposes of like the payments. Yeah. Like I know, like for example, like Phil, who's the auditor, like, you know, he's exiting through USDC, so right. Like it just makes it's a one step easier if we can pay him. And
we could just hold one in USDC if we wanted, right? Because then we would have like I guess 200,000 in USDC and like 150 in XDAI, and people would be able to choose either one.
Yeah, as long as there's enough. I don't really know. It seems like most people are doing it. I guess because we really haven't had the USDC.
USDC, so,
yeah. Except for that little bit that I accidentally requested, that kind of screwed up the other proposal.
But I mean, that's the reason that we should have USDC.
Tether's now on. If he's off ramping through Coinbase, Tether's all now on Coinbase too, so he can off ramp using Tether if he wants to.
Just remember, he's very security minded.
Yeah, definitely USDC. I think that's a good point. Any other kind of thoughts on the funding? This is separate from swapper liquidity. We have separate proposals for that. And then I guess the question in terms of the process, I've kind of just been using the previous authorization posts, and I think, you know, the fund transfers are kind of clear under that because we're really funding another base. But we've been pretty clear that these type of trades do not fall under the Treasury authorization proposal, diversification authorization, and I think that's right, and we should continue to do that. And maybe we should think about the specific frequency of these transfers just so we can automate them a little bit. Dave and I were talking a little bit about this.
Is there a max amount of value that DXDAO said could be on XDAI?
So in the proposals that have gone on XDAI, the first one said 500,000, and then when we got to like 300 or 400,000, it was we should increase it primarily because we're going to put swapper liquidity and swapper in there. So I feel like the assets in swapper, like I feel like shouldn't count, or like those are more like investments in products. But in general, like I don't think we should have we don't need more than $500,000 in XDAI to fund, you know, normal operations.
But should there be like an overall, like what DXDAO is comfortable with, like for XDAI, like because let's say the bridge disappears and the money's gone forever. Well, even if the bridge disappeared, I guess you could still use the money on XDAI. But anyway, like $10 million of the DXDAO's treasury is like a number that people are comfortable with having on XDAI, which is another chain, or is it more than that, or is it less than that, or something like that? And that includes like on DXDAO plus swapper plus other products, yeah.
Right, like I think it makes sense to have this kind of like overall, like what's the, the tolerance for being on a separate chain, like I mean, to me, just to throw a number out, like 10%.
I was literally going to say the exact same thing. It's like, it feels kind of right. Like 10% that's kind of where we probably shouldn't go above that, right? Because if things exploded, we lost 10%, that would be really, really bad, but it would not be crippling and we'd have everything. But 10% is still pretty significant, right? I mean, the portfolio, I mean, that's like 6 or 7 million dollars, right? So if we think we got 5 million of that in Swapper, like that's a good chunk.
Yeah, and it's like weighing risks against like what the ambition is, right? And I mean, and we're doing pretty well on XDAI. I mean, I think Swapper could potentially be like the best exchange on XDAI if we kind of keep going with the development and the liquidity and stuff. I mean, obviously it's still behind HoneySwap and BowSwap with the farming, but I mean, I think we have a lot of good things coming up, and it could become like the exchange on XDAI, and that's a great opportunity. And then it's like you're weighing that against, well, there's some like tail risk that like XDAI gets shut down because it's too centralized, and somebody gets like the governments go after the validators or something like that could happen, and you just want to like have some kind of measured, balanced view on that.
Anyone else think anything differently, or like have a number or way to think about this?
I guess it changes over time as well, right? As changes mature or become worse. I mean, it would be awesome if one day, of course, XDAI is self-sufficient, right? Like that the products on XDAI generate enough revenue to cover the cost. That would, of course, be awesome. But yeah, 10% sounds reasonable, I guess, to start.
That is a good point, that our revenue generation is highest on XDAI, right? We're actually generating kind of some real revenue there. Both, obviously, the protocol fee, it's a 0.0025% of each trade DXDAO is getting, but also the assets that are deployed are gaining trade fees, earning trade fees.
Yeah, and then on XDAI, the protocol fee goes straight to the treasury as well, unlike mainnet.
Right, which is like, I guess, a little bit on you, David, to like we want to like track that and eventually like make sure it's going, because like the idea is to deliver that right to the bonding curve, at least under the current model, I think. And but yeah, I mean, it's pretty cool if we could get to $1 million a day. Like I think we're kind of consistently above 100K in volume between mainnet and XDAI lately, and like $1 million a day is about 90K per year in protocol fees, and then 10 times that if all of that like liquidity was DXgov's liquidity, it's like 10 times that in like just the swap liquidity fees overall. So I mean, that starts to be meaningful, right? It like can really like impact our budget and profits, and it's pretty cool. And like hopefully we keep that up.
And it's like a set it and forget it. Obviously, we need to manage the assets, but it's like they're just like earning fees.
Yeah, and I mean something like with DAI, it's almost like helping DXgov balance the treasury, which is like something we're doing anyways, right? Like it's selling on the way up and buying on the way down, and like
earning fees as it trades sideways. Well, I think the WETH DAI is a great one. Yeah, go ahead.
What would be better, like putting ETH and DAI into a swapper pool and earning $1 million in revenue over the year, or not putting it in there, and if ETH goes up, earning $2 million? What's better?
Well, so I think as long as we are like keeping as long as we have a holistic picture on like that includes the liquidity in the products as like part of the diversification strategy, right? Like, I mean, I think it's better to earn revenue while also diversifying, right? Which is like, there's other reasons to do that, right? Which is like, we don't know if there's going to be a bear market. Like we want to have revenues, like we want to have runway secured for at least a few years, I would say 5 years. So if we can like meet that goal while also earning on that money, then like, it's a win-win.
Yeah, and I think ETH DAI or ETH USDC LP is a great part of portfolio that also includes just stablecoin yielding, right? Because like that's going to be that's a part. It's one allocation, but I think earning fees and also being exposed a little bit to the price of ETH is a good part of the overall portfolio structure.
And of course, you have to remember, like, the other great benefit of putting liquidity into Swapper is it's supporting and like advancing Swapper, right? So,
as opposed we put it in Euro and we're just earning the yield from that. Cool. All right. So I will we'll do an XDAI transfer proposal, and then we should think about another treasury authorization proposal moving forward with that. Yeah, and then I think that was it for proposals that were out there. Next to talk about is want to give an update on the DXD buyback. So just before or during or on, it seemed that the code for the Swapper liquidity relayer has been released, and then there's now some steps for the multi-call installation. So I think that community members will be able to deploy that shortly. I don't know if John or Federico want to comment on.
Yeah, exactly. Basically, this testing has gone well on XDAI for the Swapper farming liquidity relayer, which basically means the code is ready. I just made the public announcement, and so now we're just waiting for the community to do the deployments, and we'll see that. I mean, typically, like, with product releases and stuff, this usually takes like less than a day before you'll see a proposal too. So we're just waiting for that now.
Sweet. And this does say relayer. Everything is a relayer, I guess, in a way. But so this one is the farming liquidity relayer. So this would allow DXDAO to interact with the farming contracts that like power Swapper. And so this was what we did. We did this on XDAI last week, and that was what the test proposal was for. But it's important for this multi-call scheme to basically connect and have whitelisted all of the different relayers we have. And I guess now we have a Gnosis protocol relayer, a Swapper liquidity relayer, which deposits a liquidity into Swapper, and then a farming liquidity relayer, which interacts with the farming contracts. Is that right?
Exactly. Yes, it's a lot of relayers, but yeah, they're
ETH relayer too. We'd have an ETH relayer too, because just use Augusto.
Yeah, some of this is a function of we're a little constrained with our current governance contracts where they can't do approves, right? So that's one of the reasons why you need like a relayer sometimes. Other times you just have all this other stuff you need to like be done that you want like a relayer for, but. Yeah, I think like eventually we'll like have more flexibility with the newer governance systems that we'll develop, and also like this discussion about the multi-sig. The ultimate goal here is to like retire that multi-sig. Like once the governance contracts are like flexible enough and like do what we need them to do, we won't need the multi-sig for anything. So. But that will take some time.
Cool. Yeah, so that'll be exciting. And then just going along with that, Tammy and myself and a couple others have been working on documentation to try to explain and provide some structure to what this buyback program would be. And thinking about how the Treasury authorization proposal laid out the parameters of what DXDAO is trying to do, and then it was up to specific proposals that would fall within those parameters to actually execute on those trades. And so that's similar to what we're doing here. This is meant to be a signal proposal that will include all the information about what the buyback would look like, and then we'll get that approved by rep holders, and then there will be separate proposals, can be proposed by anyone, that are DXD buyback orders that fall into the parameters outlined on that. And then those orders themselves, of course, will be relying on the relayer contracts that we were just, the GP relayer contract that we were just discussing.
I've been thinking a little bit about XDAI versus mainnet. What are your kind of thoughts on that? Or like, what do people here on the call think? Like, does it make more sense to have the buyback on XDAI? Should it be split? Like, yeah, what's the best? I would just say that one of the advantages of XDAI is I think things could happen a little more quickly, right? Like we don't have a whitelist on the multi-call. Like the proposal times are a little shorter. So I mean, there's the potential for faster movements on XDAI, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I'm totally pro just using XDAI. It's faster, it's cheaper. The whole rep base can vote and participate. At the end of the day, we want to buy back as quick as possible because DXDAO is very undervalued. So I really just care about buying back DXC as cheap as it is right now.
Others? Any?
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I mean, we don't have to choose one, right? We can do it in both of them. So, I mean, let's do it in both.
Yeah,
that's kind of what I'm thinking. Even especially because you can do XDAI first, because I think there's something. I mean, like mainnet is center stage, right? It's kind of like gets some attention, and I think we're noticing this a little bit with Swapper now. Like I think even if mainnet is very, very crowded, I think we need to be devoting resources and attention to Swapper mainnet just as a way to build it up so it gains some legitimacy, right? And so I think with this, it would kind of be the same thing. There's like a good DXD market on XDAI, like it's all on Swapper. We kind of all have that. But I think we also want to like compete on mainnet too. So I'd be in favor of both.
Yeah, I think that one thing we could do is sorry, it's my dog. So one thing we could do is focus the swapper. I know we're trying to do some swapper liquidity as well from the buyback. So we could focus some of that as well onto the XDAI buyback part. And then whatever we put in the main treasury, because we're not putting everything into swapper, we can put that from the mainnet repurchase.
That's a really good point because there's no XDXD in XDXDAO right now. So presumably if we want to have DXDAO providing liquidity on XDAI, we need to somehow get DXD over there. So it might actually just be easier to buy the DXD on XDAI for that.
Yeah, and Martin made a good point. Like our products are not active on mainnets besides Swapper. But I think our products are kind of like we are focusing ourselves completely on XDAI. So why not just use XDAI?
I'm looking at something. Go ahead.
I kind of agree with all of the above, and like the dual approach, I think makes a lot of sense. I think just to add in, there is another like wrinkle to this, which is an anxiety around the fact that we're using, or like at least the plan has been to use Gnosis protocol v1, but at the same time, like Gnosis is looking to basically sunset Gnosis protocol. My expectation is that things will be able to work just fine for like the near term, but like eventually we need to move to something else. And so I do have a little bit of anxiety around like the fact that we're beholden to a platform that is actively being sunset. But like I said, I think they've indicated that they'll like help us and support things for the near term. But in the back of my mind, I'm like, there is some outside chance that we would need to scramble, and I think the easiest backup would be to do a buyback through Swapper itself. But yeah, sorry, General.
So if we do both networks, both GPv1, right?
They could both be GPv1. I mean, the backup that like the next alternative I had in mind was doing it directly on Swapper, and that's attractive as a next option because it requires kind of relatively small modifications to the Swapper liquidity relayer. Like, we basically add the buy function instead of the deposit function, and then that thing works somewhat similarly.
And you could imagine that if we do like one buyback on, so we do a single buyback on Gnosis protocol v1, that works well, but then GPv1 like shuts down completely and we're kind of left. I think that buyback and the things we're talking about with Swapper farming can drive liquidity to DXD on Swapper XDAI so that we should be able to more easily even make good trades, right? And especially the size that we're doing. So I think if GPV1 does not work out, or like we don't think that's a long-term solution, the way we fix that is by like driving DXD liquidity to Swapper and then using that to do the purchase. And we have the ability to drive DXD liquidity to Swapper because we now have the farming campaign ability.
And then eventually it would be cool.
Modification.
Oh, sorry, Nathan.
Yeah.
What was that?
Yeah, I was just wondering this modification to the Swapper liquidity relay. How long would it take to do that?
I mean, I think it's probably about a week. Like we need like, a day or two of development and then like a couple of days of auditing. And of course that just needs to be kind of like worked into people's schedules. But yeah, the problem with that on mainnet is like to install it, you then have to do another multi-call, which takes 3 weeks to think that, yeah. So, I mean, it's easier to get that up and running on XDAI, but
yeah.
In that case, why don't we use GPV1 for mainnet and while it's running, use that 1 week while it's running on mainnet on GPV1 to do the modification and kick off from the second week on XDAI with Swapper, like do both.
Yeah, I mean, it's maybe even possible to like reverse that and like while we're installing the multi-call on mainnet, get the Swapper version installed on XDAI and actually get that going first. I mean, that would actually, from a technical perspective, I think that's actually like a timeline we could do. But yeah,
GPV1 works, and they've told us it works, and we've tested it, and everything works. This is like, we know this isn't a long-term solution, so we got to make sure that we have the ability to do something else. And I think that Swapper on XDAI is a good option.
And looking further down, like a few months down the line, I think it would make a lot of sense to use Mesa, of course, like the auction, mechanism.
Also, John, one like if we do multiple mainnet and XDAI buyback, I think XDAI will be faster to be ready, right? We also need to add the new multi-call on XDAI.
Yeah, exactly. XDAI, we can be faster in several respects. Like, I mean, one reason XDAI is faster is there is no whitelist on the multi-call. The reason for that is like there's just less funds at risk on the XDAI, right? So we're more comfortable with taking that approach there versus mainnet where there's 50 million. We have a more conservative approach to multi-call. So like, there's no need for a new multi-call installation. If we deploy the Swapper like relayer on XDAI, it can work the day we deploy it, right? The other reason we can move a lot faster on XDAI is, as has been recently demonstrated, the ability to reach absolute majority on proposals means any proposal could potentially be passed within hours, right? So like we have a lot more agility on XDAI for those reasons.
Yeah, which means like we will probably buy back way sooner on XDAI than mainnet, right?
We could move a lot faster on XDAI, yes.
Okay.
There's obviously this like we're looking for a post and proposals and to the proper signal to get this going, but from a technical perspective, things can move much quicker on XDAI.
And the good news is, from a technical perspective, there's like no difference. Between XDAI and mainnet. So it's like we're outlining the same process that we would be going through, the same technical explainer there. Just like the times are mostly the big difference.
The times, and then like I think the other thing to consider, which is not technical really, but like the majority of DXD is still on mainnet. But if you think about it though, like GP Gnosis protocol requires a deposit. And so in some ways, it's not unlike like, bridging over to, the trust assumptions are different. Like GP, is like a smart contract on Ethereum. If we're encouraging people to move to XDAI, you're like assuming that the trust assumptions of the XDAI network, which is, proof of authority, like, a relatively small set of validators, et cetera.
Cool. We'll look out for the release, and then also be on the lookout for the forum post that will kick off a signal proposal to get this in front of rep holders. Awesome. Switching gears, Melanie wanted to get some updaters on contributor UX.
Yeah.
Squad.
Hey everyone. So just an update of what we're doing in the contributor experience squad. Tomorrow we're going to be starting the process with Trey and Chase from Position to find our marketing lead. I will update everyone when we have more information about the candidates coming through the pipeline. Internally, we're working through the process of how to review candidates once received from Position. At the moment, we think the process will consist of an extensive review of all candidates' prior experience, references in media, then conduct formal interviews with each candidate to identify which are the strongest fits for the role. After screening the candidates, we're hoping to have at least 3 or 4 really great candidates to present to DXgov, and then we can all decide on who we feel can best take on this position together. And as always, we're looking for more contributors to join us. We'll an updated positions list with their descriptions on the contributor hub either today or by the end of the week. At the moment, we'd like to bring on quite a few new contributors. We're looking for 2 senior Web3 front-end developers, a senior Solidity engineer, a UX whiz, an Asia-focused marketing guru, a product support manager, a QA engineer, and we're also discussing bringing on a few low-level marketing contributors for each product we have. In addition, we've been communicating with ETHWorks to provide us with a front-end developer for Swapper. If they're able to provide us with one, keep an eye out for a post on DAO Talk with the details. And then finally, an update on DXD tracking. Ali has gone through all of the past proposals on Alchemy to track the most accurate version of DXD payment allocations. We have taken into account issued DXD to vesting contracts and unissued DXD, which should be rewarded to contributors along the vesting stipulations outlined in the worker compensation guidelines. I will be reaching out to each of you individually today with the totals and breakdowns of how much issued and unissued DXD we have for you. I will send you all individually a spreadsheet to review, and if you have any questions or find any discrepancies, let me know, and we can talk through them and resolve them together. All right, and that's all. Any questions, guys?
The DXD tracking sheet is really great, and Ali and Melanie have done a lot of work to go through and try to make sure that we're accounting for everything and we get a clear indication of what everyone is due. So be on the lookout for that.
And there is a 1-year cliff, so nothing is basically really like outstanding at the moment, but it is a ticking clock on the the DXD vesting system that we'd like to stand up. That BlockRocket had started, and a little update on that is I had spoken with Blackscale, and he is interested in kind of taking over development of that and kind of bringing it home in terms of the development is actually starting by like doing more of an audit review. So yeah, hopefully the ball also is moving on that front, and we'll be ready in time for anybody to actually, before anybody actually like should be receiving their TXT.
And we'll do this for rep too. We'll kind of develop a system for that. And then, yeah, if there's any other proposals outstanding, check them with Melanie. Move that forward. Melanie.
When you say do that for rep, is that like rep the people are owed? And then what's the timing for like getting people rep on mainnet, I guess? Okay. Oh.
I love how it's like certain ringtones, just like that sounded European. It's like the police. Yeah, so I'm thinking mostly about the tracking component, because I think that's a very important thing that we like with DXD, right? There's like we need to track what everyone's due, and then we need to like actually distribute it. And the same thing with the rep. We need to devote some resources to figuring out how to do the distribution of rep. And there's some options out there, but I think there's a little bit of heavy lifting there. But I think just from the contributor UX side, the most important UX squad side, the most important thing that you can do is tracking the rep.
With gas quite low these days, it could be an opportunity in temporary solution for individuals to take the due rep they've earned like over like say 4 months and just do one rep request and document it.
Yeah, I think that we should definitely think and consider that. I think the only way we get to that is if we get this sheet, just because the last 2 or 3 months we've been with the X, I think there's confusion. But I agree. Like, I mean, it's if we did like 3 or 4 month rep syncs, even for individuals, like that wouldn't be, if gas is not, you know, we're in the 40s and 50s, it's not crazy now.
Yep.
Yeah, I think if you're talking about like net passing like 20 proposals, that seems like a reasonable expense for the DAO to kind of pursue that avenue. I mean, potentially similarly with like DXD vesting, like rolling up several months of that. That could be an alternative. Hopefully we get like the kind of more robust system up and running though.
But I do think just it is important that we just like track this and get all this information out there just so we can be sure on whatever we end up doing. And like it takes a lot of time to do that because it's going proposal by proposal and then everyone's gonna have questions. So yeah,
for me the DXD, which because it's vested for 1 year, is like less is like that system's gonna be awesome, but it's like less important to get people their DXD. Getting people their like rep boost and their worker earning rep like for like a 4-month period that getting it more distributed and right sized on mainnet, I think is a kind of an important thing. I mean, I guess we're not doing that many votes, but when there's going to be an important vote, we want the latest contributors to have enough rep to do like a 50% approval if needed or something like that.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, and then lastly, DXvote. So talking about some of the alchemy stuff earlier, Augusto has been working hard on DXvote, and so Augusto, do you want to give us an update?
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, we received the results of the audit of the smart contracts that are going to be used in the DXvote application. And well, the audit went pretty well. The auditor field identified 2 critical issues, which is good. I think that they can be in a specific condition that the auditor presented. They can cause a big trouble, but those conditions are very hard to present. And moreover, if we have a clear process on, like I think we do, on which addresses do we allow the avatar to call, we are doing with a multi-call, where every time that we are going to deploy a new multi-call, we review the addresses that this multi-call is going to be calling and what the action that is going to be taken. Because on DXvote, what we have is a permission registry that we are going to be able to allow and to add permissions on schemes that are already deployed. So the field identifies some issues there, and they are going to be fixed this week. And after that, we need to redeploy on Rinkeby and start planning the deployment on Arbitrum and do some finish some tasks that were decided that are going to be included on the version 1.0. So what has been done is the audit, and I did a huge refactor on the application, trying to load information in a more optimized way and creating a cache of all the data that is needed for each network. Right now we are using only Rinkeby, but we are going to have a cache of information for Rinkeby, XDAI, Arbitrum, that we are going to be updating every 2 weeks, a month, something like that. And it's going to allow the app to work independently, being connected directly with the Ethereum network and fetching all the information from there. So we are going to be testing that. Yeah, that's it. I'm going to submit a proposal for what I'm going to be working on that I already shared on DAO Talk on the version 1.0 issues and tasks. And we were talking with Chris about setting a bi-weekly call related with DXvote where we can review more than review, discuss, and prioritize on what we should be working on the current version that we are working and on the future versions, and to share experience and request more features or share bugs or experience on the app.
Sweet.
Right now, on the link that we always share, it's unusable because, like I said, I'm doing a huge refactor and testing the Rinka. But as soon as it is ready to start playing again with the changes on the contracts that were audited, I'm going to share again the application URL, and we can start playing, testing there, playing there, and start thinking about the deployment on Arbitrum.
I get just a little bit exciting every time you say deploy on Arbitrum, both because it's like the opportunity, I think, for Swapper, but I mean, it's like the opportunity for Swapper, L2s in general on Ethereum, and then also like DXDAO, like truly morphing into a multi-chain like governance structure. I just think it's an exciting thing, and I think DXgov is kind of building towards that, and that's really exciting.
Yeah, we should still be careful there. Like, I mean, if we are going to be one of the first dApps there, I think that something for sure will go wrong at the first month on the Arbitrum network. It's going to be the first layer 2 experience connected directly with mainnet. So yeah, let's see. We are going to be ready there, and we are going to have we are going to have our governance there. At least we are going to have our governance platform, and we are going to be able to use it. We don't necessarily need to have funds or have a lot of funds. So
likely, yeah. Just the likely go wrong from Augusto is like Blackscale's comment in Keybase that was like, I expect something catastrophic to happen in L2s, which is like kind of true. The idea of being like, this is a huge like, shift in lots of really new things being used, and so it'll be. But I think like again, this is why we've had experience in like the XDAI experience. I think is just going to become so important to this. And just thinking, I think we first deployed DXDAO in like September, October. Took a little while to get up, and so I guess for Arbitrum, it will be hopefully it'll be a little bit quicker just because we've done this before, but that will take some time. I guess we also need to think about naming DXDAO base on Arbitrum. I kind of like XDXDAO as a short. I don't know if a DXDAO has the same ring.
I really don't care about the name. One thing that we also should think about is DXgov on XDAI. That will be way simpler, way easier. So, in fact, once that we have the contract that we already testing on Rinkebuy, we can deploy it on XDAI, and we can also have our DXgov on XDAI. And I think that is going to be awesome, and it's going to work super well. And I think we are not going. We need Arbitrum in terms of governance because we are going to have a product there. But I think that we are going to end up using for our governance structure and funding and all our worker proposals and everything that we have been using. DXgov, XDXgov on XDAI. We are going to be using DXgov on XDAI for everything. It's going to be way simpler and easier.
I would love to see that day. I think, cool. And just as Augusto said, haven't done it yet, but maybe trying to set up a bi-weekly call just as this kind of be able to gather some feedback and check in to maybe support that. So if you have any interest in that, get in touch and be on the lookout.
Yeah, maybe next to governance calls where we can discuss technical and application stuff and user experience. We can give 30 minutes to each of them and to review what has been done. And if anyone wants to collaborate and contribute there, take any task, we can even talk about that there.
Sweet. I think that was it. The only other thing, just to note, no proposal yet, but there's a good discussion about what type of farming campaign we maybe want to launch with swapper beta. And there's some polls to vote on. And so I think it would be good maybe for us to find signal by the end of the week so that we can start to move that towards a formal proposal. Awesome. Any parting thoughts, comments? Great. All right. Well, have a good day, everyone.